All right, your cybersecurity program is taking shape right now. So let's recap what we discussed so far. We discussed about hardware inventory, software inventory, setting a governance in place for the reporting of your risk assessments. Now we're going to do the risk assessment. Now the risk assessment here is not necessarily scanning your network aimlessly. You need to have a strategy. And to do so, instead of reinventing the wheel, I recommend using a framework. And there's a few out there for you. I'll mention a few of them. One being the OCTAVE from Carnegie Mellon. That's a good one to start with. If you're a small organization, there are a light version of that, and not necessarily the full OCTAVE, but OCTAVE Allegro. And I believe Carnegie Mellon came out with another one as well. So is a framework that you can use. Another one is the NIST 100-30, which is the guide for conducting risk assessment. That is also a great framework for you to establish your program. The next one is the ISO. So we have the NIST, the ISO. We have a US centric, and the only one you have a global one. Now, having said that, NIST is having a global reach on our organization across the globe. So it's not so true anymore. But then the ISO 27005, or the latest, I think the latest right now is 2011, or the latest, those provide you with the structure to establish your risk assessment program. So why you need one? Identifying vulnerabilities and who to contact. What is your stakeholders? What is the process for reporting, and so on and so forth. Those require some sort of a guidance, and the framework will provide that to you as an organization. Identifying vulnerabilities is a fundamental first step of your risk program. Absolutely. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework ID.RA-1 assess vulnerabilities are identified and documented. This is the first step we're going to find. You're going to identify them. We're going to document either a spreadsheet or a report with followed by an analysis and a conclusion there. Having that is your first step on that risk assessment identification subcategory in this cybersecurity framework. But having that also, not only that, you also need to focus on having the right staff that is trained to manage and oversee your vulnerability management framework. Not only that, these staff need to be trained on all the tools and automation and methodologies on how to perform vulnerability management framework. That is also an important part of this phase. You need that qualified staff to make that happen for you. The next step then, you team to identify the threats on your organization, both internal and external to your organization. Now that you identify the vulnerabilities, you need to identify the threats to your organization. That falls and aligns right into the next subcategory in this cybersecurity framework, and that is the ID.RA-3, which is a threat both internal and external are identifying and documenting the organization. Why that is important? Well, should I just patch everything? Absolutely. But remember, you're not going to be able to protect your organization against everything, every threat out there. You need to focus on key direct threats to your organization that you will establish a strategy on protecting the organization, on requesting funding for investment, that a particular threat has a greater likelihood to occur on your industry or on your particular organization than any other threat. So you have to make a priority list out of those. So that is the identification of threat in your organization. Next, remember, it's entirely possible to have vulnerabilities that your program have identified without a exploit out there. So that is just fine. You need to identify those as well. Why the reason I mentioned has an exploit or not? Well, that will be part of your priority list. Perhaps the ones that have the exploit, you do it first, and the ones that have exploit, you do it later. Not to say I'm not going to patch because there is no threat to it, that there's no exploit or immediate threat to that. that is not the case. It's just a priority. But also that falls into the NIST CSF ID.RA-1, which is threat, vulnerability, likelihood, and impacts that are used to determine risk. So once again, right, that priority list you need to. So here we are addressing 3 subcategories of the NIST cybersecurity framework, part of your risk assessment program. So identify the vulnerabilities, identify the threats, and then you prioritize how you're going to address these threats in your organization, starting from the highest risk against your critical cyber asset, affecting the mission, vision, and the services that you provide to your shareholders and stakeholders and the community.